Just wanted to just go over some of the things that I spoke about last week and go on. HaMitzvah achas esrei ishi zona mi'asois matzeba ischabole v'chabduo ischabole leho is very odd. It's probably yiskapsoi leho, and that reflects what he says in the Mishnah Torah also. It's a gathering place. And v'chabduo l'chayra is referring to the Avodah Zarah. The place to Mechaber Avodah Zarah, the gathering place to Mechaber Avodah Zarah. You shouldn't be similar, you shouldn't be over Hashem, you shouldn't relate to Hashem similarly as you relate to Avodah Zarah, which I pointed out that it sounds like the Ramban Chumash of Eicha Yavdu Agoyim Oelis Alehei V'Eseken Gamoni, and I pointed out also the Rambam Nevuchim also uses this pasuk in the same way, even though Mishnah Torah doesn't. Now, the chiddush over here is that all these three are not Avodah Zarah. Ram mentioned things meaning Avodah Zarah, and then he mentions an ashara of kriya besifrei Avodah Zarah, that someone's going to be oved. It's going to help him come to be oved Avodah Zarah, and there's three things which are really not Avodah Zarah at all, but they look like the way the goyim are oved. They're Avodah Zarah, and you shouldn't be oved Hashem in that fashion. So here is a big chiddush, and then I pointed out the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim says you don't allow goyim to be making matzeva v'lita sheila. It doesn't mention the maskis, which is the next mitzvah, but it mentions 2 out of 3. And l'chayra goy has no isa, just the Bezdin Shel Yisrael doesn't allow it, as we mentioned. In Nevuchim, he doesn't talk about being an isa by goyim, but he does quote 2 of the 3, different 2 of the 3, in terms of that which is doima to the way, and it's b'chlal v'yoma eicha yavdu hagoyim oele es Elohei v'eseken gamoni v'lotzeloy mashlo yasekein l'Hashem. And then he quotes there, Kamo shehiz here me'even maskis militoira kol eitz eitzel mizbach Hashem, and he doesn't mention matzeva there. So I don't know if it's lab dafka, but that's just the facts, okay? Now, we pointed out that the Ram doesn't talk about in any way that this is a place of akrova, as Rashi has in Chumash, Matzeves Evan Achas, Lahakriv Oleho Afilu Shamayim. But the Ramban also Chumash doesn't talk about akrova. In Dvorim Tezayin Chav Beis, Vanir Be'enai, Ki Aknan Mashtuf Avodah Zarah Isim B'chol Botei Elohim Mizbeach Lahakriv Olakobonis, the Evan Gedola Mutzeves Al Pesach Habayis Lamoid Oleh HaKoimim. It's a place where the Koimim stood. Okay, so it's something to do with Avodah Zarah, but it's not a Mokom Akrov. Then we pointed out the issue of what this matzeva is. Is it the Ram seems to say it's a binyan and doesn't deal at all with whether it's one Evan or more than one Evan. That's the Ram Perik Vav of the Hilchos Avodah Zarah Alocha Vav. Matzeva Shasra Teira Hi Binyan Shakol Miskapsin Elel. And the Minchas China points out that it's not like Rashi, because Rashi seems to say that it's only Evan Achas. And Rashi equates this with Bimus in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Mem Zayin Amud Beis. And Chanano does the same thing. In Nun Gimel Amud Beis and Avodah Zarah, Pirish ben Besos, we pointed out, Shmani of Avodah Zarah, V'hu Mefurish Hobomo L'zeh Bimus, V'hu Even Achas V'Matzeva. And that's like the Yishalmi, because the Yishalmi, it's only Even Achas, because you Mavatal, one Even is Nifkam, then it's an Avodah Zarah Shabbatela, whereas in Mizbeach, we require Kol Even Be'even. And the whole idea of Pegima is only as far as Akrova. We don't find Pegima in a binyan that has anything to do. So the Avodah HaMelech says, since Yerushalmi is mashma like that, and whatever, he assumes the Rambam is like that. But it's very difficult to assume such a thing, because the Rambam only mentions Bimois in the dinim of Ibur Avodah Zarah, and doesn't mention it at all in when he talks about Matzeva. And he doesn't mention Matzeva when he talks about Ibur. So you get the impression that they're two separate things. And I would assume Bimus is only Avodah Zarah. And Matzeva is not Dafka Avodah Zarah. As it's even Avodah Hashem, except for Rabbeinu Chanan. Okay, say that. Except for the Ibn Ezra, who happens to say that that Matzeva is only for Avodah Zarah, but that's what the Ram is holding. So I'm not sure. I don't see the hechrach or anything in the Ram to say what the Avodah HaMelech says, except for the fact that he wants to say that everything works out. Okay, but you have to have it internally working in the Rambam. I don't know. So we showed him one after the next, and it's also Sifri, say that Matzeva is not Avodah Zarah, is no Avodah Zarah, but it's a separate Isa to Eiver HaKodesh Baruch, the Derech She'ev Avodah Zarah. Rashi ala Teiro and Dvorim Tezayin Chav Beis, Tivei Masav Shesonei, the Ramban also, there in Dvorim, Tivei Masav V'Tama Shesonei, Teisis Avodah Zarah Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Tivei Masav V'Yichut. And the Sifri is like that. The Sifri says in Pasha Sheftim, Pisuk Kuf Mem Vav, V'lo Yisokim L'cho Matzeva, Ein L'cho Ela Matzeva Avodah Zarah. Minayin, V'dinu Ma Matzeva Sha'uva, Li'ovos Snua L'bonim, Avodah Zarah Shesnua Li'ovos, Ein Odin Shesnua L'bonim. It was foolish that the Matzeva is not Avodah Zarah. The Ibn Ezra and the Dvorim Tezayin Chav Beis, and that pasuk seems Li'sokim L'Avodah Zarah. V'eira Shesonei Rak Matzeva Shelo L'Avodah Zarah Eineno Asura. V'eira Nemo Pasha V'Yishlach, and nothing changed. V'Yishlach Yaakov, nothing changed with Matan Torah. Now, up to that's just a general overview, just to bring you up to where we're standing. So comes the Ramban. Is the Ramban that B'shas Matan Torah, that's the Aseres HaDibros, right before the Aseres HaDibros, according to the Ramban, there was a Matzeva. It's a person Chumash. The Ramban in Gracious, Chavov, hey, v'yesh lisho, him kain, eich hekim Yaakov Matzeva, v'chulei, u'Moshe Rabbeinu, hekim shtei mesrei Matzeva. Moshe Rabbeinu himself was making Matzeva. V'heich efsher, shiu noigim heter, b'teira, b'ma she'osa Avrom Aviem al atzmoi, v'kovo Hashem schar al hadover. Who sheitzav is bonov, there's beiso achov, l'leches bedrocha. V'chule v'matzeva mitzvah nischatshe b'zman yeduhi, כמו שדורשו חס בספרי, והשסונה השם אלוקיך, שסונה אחר היסהו בימי אוגוסט. So he learns, very interesting, that that Avram Avinu sheshoma mishmarti was Mechayev Moshe, and how could he do it? It's not part of Mishmeres Mishmarti. So at that point, it wasn't Nesa. Moshe was a Chutz La'aretz, I don't know, but that's what he assumes. But that's his raya that it wasn't Nesa at that point. The Sefer Ikrim says in Maimah Gimel Perek Yudalit that Matzeva was Nesra at the end of the 40 years in the Midbar. Ugdol mizuam b'sifri al leisokim l'chom Matzeva shesan Hashem Elokecha afa pishohei sahuva me'ovois kloima v'afilu b'mei Moshe שבש"ס מתנתר בונם מזבח תחת זהור, והקים 12 מצבות, לשניהם עשו שבטי ישראל, ונס הזה בארבס מויב, בשנס הוא הבויב. So it comes out that according to Sefer Ikim was Nasa only at the end of Aboim Shono, and that's how Ramban, the Ramban can go like that, because Ramban Shiti, remember in Sherish Aleph, the Taryag Mitzvos were not said at Sina B'davko, but there was a process given out throughout the Aboim Shono. And that's what he says, that that mitzvahs were given to Aaron, and he talks about Bnei Slavchot. It wasn't said. It was only said later. But if you accept the Rambam, that who takes the Maimah Chazal very literally, Taryag Mitzvahs, Nemel Moshe Sinai, so it means there were Taryag Mitzvahs already. So what's going on? When was it Nesa? So I was wondering, maybe here the Ram will accept the Ramban to say that Dvorim from the Parshas, that or you can do it the other way also. You see, the Rashi says this say this is just the opposite, that the creases bris. Rashi says the creases bris and the matzeva was before Aseres HaDibros. So maybe it was Neser right afterwards. The Ramban says, and the Ram can also go like that, that there was Aseres HaDibros, and then there was a creases bris, and then at the end of Pas Mishpatim, it says, Vayom Hashem el Moshe alei elai ahoro, v'yehei shom v'yetnu lecho es luchos ha'evan v'Torah v'mitzvah asher kosafti lo hiroisam. And this, if you remember the Rambam Nakdom to Mishnah Torah, this is the real Matan Torah. As the Rambam says there, he opens up Mishnah Torah. He first of all in Shiur Shlishi also has it that he says but he also call a mitzvah shenitnu l'Moshe b'sinim frushin nitnu shenever v'yetnu l'cho es luchas ha'evan v'Torah mitzvah is Matan Torah. Torah is the Torah sheb'ksav v'mitzvah zu pirusha v'tzivonu l'asa Torah mitzvah. Mitzvah zo he anikris Torah sheb'al peh. So whatever it is, there's no need to say that that it was the end of Aboim Shana. The Chumash records like that, but according to the Rambam, it could have been given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai, with the rest of the Taryag mitzvahs. Then it says here in Hoyu Boine Matzev Masivan or Avodah Zarah. They built the Matzeva and it was a stand for Avodah Zarah. So L'cheret B'Sham Avodah Zarah. This idea that it was a mochlim for the Avodah Zarah itself is not found in Mishnah Torah. Matzeva in Perek Vav Halacha Vav Matzeva Shasa Torah Ibinyan Shemiskapskin Etzlo Va'afilu Avodas Hashem Shekein Hoya Derech Ivdei Avodah Zarah. You see, he also leaves out in Mishnah Torah the idea of Yichabdua. Yichabdua, if the Avodah Zarah is that they're coming there for to Mechabed the Avodah Zarah, which is there on top of this Evan, this or this binyan called Matzeva. In Mishnah Torah, there's no mention of that. We don't know exactly what Skapsinet, so it says that's enough. The question is there Chazorah here, or maybe there's no nafkamina halacha? The fact that it's a mokum kibbutz is enough for the lav and Shalom Yisrael. The fact they put the Avodah Zarah there or not might be irrelevant. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the issue is, but those are the facts. And then the Ram says, "V'omer yis'ala b'azchola mizeh v'lisokum l'chol matzeva asher soneh." U'mi she'ovar alav zeh chayiv malchus. Okay, beseder l'chol zedol poshes the chamaisa zi chayiv malchus. Now here, just looking through Chumash, there's another pasuk which you have to deal with, and the question is, what exactly is it, and what does it mean? The pasuk is like this: is a pasuk in Vayikra Chavav Aleph Ufesel Umatzevo. Lo yisakimu lochem. So, what is this? What's pesel? Is there a lav, a pesel or sakimu? We don't find such a lav in Minyan HaMitzvos, at least in the Rambam. I'm very, very confused. I would assume, according to the Ikrim, that this matzeva is a matzeva of the Zohar, because only in Avos Moyev was said the lav of matzeva that Ahuv may always know of Mebon. So I'm not sure exactly what happens over here, but let's assume kipshutai that the matzeva over here is a matzeva, the same matzeva we're talking about in general. There's a lav, so that's okay. But what about the lav of hakomas pesel? So the emes is that if you look at the smag, the smag has a separate lav. The smag has a lav chof shalasi l'chol pesach l'chol tmuna lahaze al ois la'atzmoi af al pi shalei ovdo ve'elohei masecha lo'isaselo lasasu lahazir af al oise l'goy. Then he has membez ufesel u'matzev lo'isakimu lochem v'tayim b'teres kvarim lahazir bo al hamekim pesel af al pi shalei ovdoi v'loi oso. It's a separate lav. Okay, so the smag counts it as a separate lav. Interesting. So let's see, what about the Ramban? There's a pasuk in Chumash, you gotta know what it is. The smag says a separate lav Minyan HaMitzvos, fesel matzeva lo sakim. So is it Isa Abasiyas Avodah Zarah? Hein la'atzmoi, hein la'cherim, and it's a lav of a koma special. The Ramban, hey, Hasogas Ramban, for Loisase Hey, has a line or two, let's see it. Aval aminiya b'tzlomim v'kiyumom hi miposek al tifnu al-lilim v'elohei masechel asasu lochem k'mo sheyizkiru b'sifro v'chein miposek ufesel u'matzev lo sakimu lochem v'omru shom b'sifro ufesel matzev u'mapesel im asisoi pesaltoi im asiso fesalto af matzevo baltokimu af pesel ma matzevo baltokimu af pesel baltokimu kloimo shiavolov b'kiyumoi b'loi asiya kagoin she'osu lo acherim kagoin she'osu lo acherim. What does he mean? The Ramban is interesting. The Ramban is interesting because he's not misalik in Minyan HaMitzvos, Ashar Gimel, and Azhor Dalit. But Gon She'osu Lo Acherim sounds very much like the law of if someone She'osu Lo Acherim, if someone makes for you an Avodah Zarah. So maybe I was wondering, and maybe I'm missing it, that the Ramban learns that the Hasora Shenase Al Yidei Acherim is not from Lo Yisaseh L'cho Fesel B'chol Tmuna in Aseres HaDibros, but it's Ufesel Matzeva Lo Yisakimu. And not Lo Yisaseh L'cho Pesel like the Rambam. So the Ramban is done. See, look, he says, because he says the lav of Loisasel Chopesel Ve'ineno, lav Basiyas Atzlomim, Kinir Mipshat Habraisa, Hashnui Mechilta, Avokulam Lavin Bavodizor Atzmo, Ploim Boeveroiso. So Lasel Chopesel is a lav of Avodizor. Oma Loyia Locho Elohim Achirim Alponai, Mikol Tzva Shamayim. L'kablo lecho be'Elohim, v'loima li'echad mehem eliato v'loisasel chopesem chol tmuna v'loishtach ve'Elohem loisodim v'chein b'chol mokom yitfos b'avodah zarah k'loshen hashchosa azeh k'loshen azeh pentashchisa v'asisen l'chopesel tmuna es kol somel v'ishchatem v'asisen pesel tmuna es kol ve'en hakavana v'asiyoson ela b'avodah som v'kabola be'Elohus. Shalahem. So it's an amazing thing. The Ramban is not misalik the mitzvah. The Ramban has Elohim but he doesn't have but he still has Azhar, Gimel, and Dalet. But how can he have it? Because this lav is lav even Avodah Zarah. So the answer is the Ramban reinterprets this lav of excuse me, Ufesel Matzeva Loisasu Lachem, Loisakimu Lachem. This is the lav of Oselo Acherim Bavodah Zarah. Ufesel Matzeva is Avodah Zarah. And we don't know. It could be possibly that, if everyone's learning like the Ikrim, it could be the Matzeva over here is also Avodah Zarah. It's one lav, and that's what it is. However, we have to understand what happened according to the Rambam. What about this lav v'akomas pesach? So, you could have said that, you have to ask yourself, how does this fit with the Ramban? That the Ramban says if you have one ashora and two things inside it, the Ramban says the two separate lavim. From like the al tvashlu menu no uboshabush al toichem menu no uboshabush mayim is two lavim. The Rambam says it's all one. So good. So it's all one. But shouldn't you mention something about the Isa of Akomas Pesach? And there's no mention of it all in Mishnah Torah. So maybe according to the Rambam, I was wondering, see, Ramban learns lesakimu means kiyuma, but by matzeva it means to erect the edifice. So I assume pesel is also the same. Even if you have one verb that goes on two separate things, you can't interpret it differently. What leisakimu is, it means leisakimu. It just means leisakimu pesel, leisakimu matzeva. See, according to the Ramban, leisakimu means kiyuma. It means naseh de'acheret. However, according to the Rambam, what I was wondering, maybe leisakimu means something like asiya. The way you make the matzeva is akomas matzeva, and pesel is akomas pesel. So then, this hasara of akomas pesel is kefil of the lav vasiyas avodah zarah. According to Ramban, it's impossible anyway, because he uses it for the other lav of asiyas avodah zarah, nasal edechem. But according to the Rambam has two lavim for avodah zarah. So wherever it is, this one falls out in one of the two. But it's not a separate lav in HaMitzvos. L'cheira, there's no reason to even talk about it. Just kefil alav. And the Yushalmi in avodah zarah is also masha like that. See, lo isasa lochem elilim ufesel masecha lo isakimu lochem lo hi asiya lo hi asiya hi kima kima and asiya hainu hach. That's what I'm saying. Sifro in Parsha Vov Bahal, Perek Tes Ois Hey, Ma Matzeva Bal Takimu, Af Pesel Bal Takimu, Lo Isakimu, Elu HaMakulis, Shal Gabe Hadrochim. How do you break the Makulis? You put it's B'derech HaKomas Avonim, as the Kovan Aaron quotes, that Makulis Shebedrochim, the Mekaime Evan Mikan, V'Evan Mikan, V'Evan Agabeim, which means Asiyas Avodah Zarah. So the law of Pesel Loisakimu means Asiyah. So if it's all the same, there's no reason to count it as two. The Yucham Purlau suggests in Lavin Loisaseh Ches and Tes that the Smag is of the opinion, because he's like Rav Hila, who disagrees with Stam of Yerushalmi and holds that Kima is not Asiyah. So if Kima is not Asiyah, then it's a separate law. So it's very confusing. I'm not sure what's going on over here. We have to look around, but I think according to the Ram, the question is the matzeva over here a matzeva avodah zarah, or it's a matzeva, or we're talking about the rest of the Torah? You would assume it's like the rest of the Torah. The Ikum is certainly not like that. The Ramban quotes this lav as a lav from Kiyum avodah zarah. So it's only part of it. The other parts of matzeva, you don't know what's going on. But the Ram is very simple. There, it talks about the matzeva that we're always talking about, and the same way there's a lav of akomas matzeva, there's a lav of akomas pesel, and akomas pesel means asiyas avodah zarah. So that's what I see over here. But the smag, it's very clear that it's a separate lav of minyan mitzvahs. There's a lav of asiyas avodah zarah, lo and lacherim, and then there's a lav of akomas pesel. But according to Ramban, he ends something like the smag, but basically he doesn't have two lav for asiyas avodah zarah. And this is the second one. There's one that he himself makes it, one shenas lachem. So it's a very interesting thing. And, there's no discussion about this over here, but the Ramban in Hay makes a short reference to it in the Hasagas, and in the Smart. We have to understand how the Rambam deals with it. I just wanted to point that out. I thought it was a very interesting thing. Now, next. This I found very confusing. There's a law of the Torah. The first law before was Asois Matzeba. Asois Matzeba. And then in HaMitzvah Shtei Mesrei, he she his hilnu he she's hilnu that may his hilnu me'asis even muchenes l'shtachvos aleho. So it's a law of Asiyah. Correct? She's Hanu me'asis even muchenes l'shtachvos aleho. We have to understand, what does it mean, even muchenes l'shtachvos aleho? Kapach is moisif. They could also be metalgame mutadois, muzumonois, but basically means that this is what it's made for. Hishtachavo. So, before we get into this, we have to deal with a very simple question. What Torah says Evan Maskis? What does Evan Maskis mean? Evan Maskis. So the Kadmonim are grappling with this issue. What does it mean? There are those that assume that Evan Maskis means an Evan which is painted, mitzuyeres. And in that group is the Chinuch, Sefer Chinuch, Mitzvah Shin Mentes, the Targum Yonason on the Posik, the Rashbam, the Askeni Balei Toisus. However, there are others that their words seem to point that you don't need Dafke Evan Mitzvahs. Any Evan could have been an Evan Maskis. Rashi Alatera, Rabbi Nochnan and Megillah, Chav Beis and Beis. So now, in that backdrop, we have to ask a question: what's the Ram Shita? On one hand, the Ram over here says it's Evan Muchenes. It just seems to be any Evan. It doesn't say what type of Evan. And when he continues here writing, in this same, he says, Kichein hoyoisin Evan mitzuyeres b'melecha b'melocha mechukama. So it seems to be a work of an artisan and painted. That's very confusing. The Ram opens up and says one thing, and then he continues and says the exact opposite. And we pointed out, this itself is a machlokes kagoyim, whether it's any Evan or it's the after Evan Mitzvahs. It's very odd. One line, a few lines later, and that's the way he writes it. So I want to suggest that there's no steer in Rambam. What you need is even that avonim muzumonos lishtachavo. They're set aside for ishtachavo. But when the Torah wrote Evan Maskis, it didn't mean you need dafka, that which is mitsuya mechukomo, an artisan's work in painting, but the derech at the time of the Torah was to use such avonim. But it doesn't mean you need such avonim. But what you need is ever muchenes, that it's set aside for shtachavo. So when he defines the mitzvah at the beginning, he says masois ever muchenes. And then later he explains that this is what the Torah is talking about, but there's no stira. And that's mistaba like that, because the beginning, when he talks about the mitzvah, he's saying, what is the mitzvah? And then he's coming to tell you, as he continues in this mitzvah, that this definition of Evan Muchemes is not a stira to what the Torah says for Evan Maskis. And it could be this is Pshat and Targum Onkelos, because Targum Onkelos said Evan Maskis is Eved Sagoda. It means an Eved which you bow down on. It's Muchan. It's Muchan for Ishtachavo. The interesting thing is, there's this whole discussion back and forth. In Sefer HaMitzvos, he said, Muchanis, and then he explains and tells you what the pshat and the posuk is. And in Maskis, where I'm learning there's no stira, in Mishnah Torah, Ki'ilu, this never existed. There's no mention of Evan Muchenes and about making any pictures on the Evan or anything. All he says, look at Perek Vav. Geen Evan Maskis, Amur Batera, Afa Pishu Mishtachave L'Shem Loike. Shenema v'Evan Maskis L'Sitnu B'Artzechem Mishtachave B'Nei Shekein O Yederch L'Ever Avudazol L'Niach Evan Stam Evan L'Foneo Mishtachave L'Soleo L'Ficha Inoisin Kein L'Shem. So there's no mention at all about anything there. Muchakem is not, Muchakem is not. So what happened here? So let's see more, and maybe we'll be able to say something about it. L'shtachvois Evan Muchenes l'shtachvo leo v'afilu hoyezeh or oise hishtachavo l'kel yisala v'zeh gam kein kidei shlizdame la'avodas hatzlomim. Okay. He kein hoyu oisin even mitzieres b'molocha mechukomo lifnei atzelem or kapach avonim muchiorois maise uben, an artisan, the work of an artisan. V'ishtachvo leho l'ois atzelem, and they would bow down to that tzelem. V'yovid avudazol mishtachvon aleim. And that is kidei. What's the purpose? They should istame lavoid the satzlomim, lavoid the zara. Mishnah also says that it's to be not to be doing avoid the zara. He says in Perik Vav, Halacha Vav, Livnei Shederech, Oiv the avoid the zara, Laniach Evan the Fonel Lishtachos. And more the Vuchim also like that. Which he read already, Perik Cheli Gimel, Perik Mem Hey, which he hears him Evan Maskis in the Torah called Eitzel, Mizbeach, Vakavona Kula Achas, Ushloi Navoid Hashem, Kidmus Avoidosam, Hachalukos, Asher Hoyu Oisen Nevodeim. Like they over there, Valzeho Indian, he's here. B'chlal v'yom eicha yavdu agoyim mo'ela esaleim v'esaken gamon. What's aloyim shel yasu kein Hashem. So it's to be over Hashem like you over Avodah Zarah. So the interesting thing is, you see, by Matzeva, it says Ashesone. And here, the Evamastis Lesitna Be'altzechem, we have no clue of why the Isa is because of Dimui for Avodah Zarah. So you could have assumed that Adrabah, you learned it out from Loisasa Lochem Elilim, Ufesel Umatzebo Loisakimu Lochem, the Evan Maskis Loisitlu Be'altzechem, Lishtachvois Aleho. That the Evan Maskis is together with Matzebo and Pesel, and it's an Indian from Avodah Zarah. Maybe that's the pshat. Rashi in Maseh seems to also say like that, because he says, Divra Masko Maskioisom, Ketago Beisagdason, the place where they bow down Hashem, showing Besachna Kalka, Beritzbas Avonim, Shel Shayish, the Shtachvois Aleim Pishadayim. They used to have their place of Avodah Zarah for Ishtachavo. Kidichsiv, the Evan Maskis will sit in Be'artzchem Lishtachvois Aleho. So l'cheira, it means that it's dumya to the Avodah Zarah. That's the lab, like that's what Rashi seems to say. So the Rambam is the lab of Evan Maskis is dimui to Avodah Zarah. Interesting is there are Rishonim that say that it's because of Avodah Zarah, but it's not because Dimyon, but it's near Kimishtachve le'Evid. The Ramban ala Teira, the Vorim, Tezayin Chav Beis, Avoyoyim of Evan Maskis le'sitno be'artzechem, le'shtachvois aleh afilu hashamayim, b'minei shu nira ki'oivei le'schiyos haheim. Ketam ho'ashero shehi michukas hagoyim. Amen. It's as if you evade the Evan. I'm not sure if it means because it's a Mitsuya or not Mitsuya, doesn't say anything. The Bechor Shor learns like that. Reb Chaim Paltiel learns like that. Zaskeni Balitesis. Sefer Chinuch also goes like that in Mitzvah Kushimem Tes. He says, the Ef Shaloima, Gam Kein Shatam, Mipnei Shenir Kemishtachave le'Evan Atzmo, Ache Shechinuo, Vitziro, Vihi No'o, Yesh Mokom Lachshu. Now we have avodah zarah that it's doimat to avodas goyim. We had avodah zarah that it's a chshad, kilo marasayin deraisa, that you oimed avodah zarah, and the mashmos of the chilta is that even maskis itself is avodah zarah. And the Eitz Mizbeach is Mishum Asiyas Avodah Zarah. The Mechiltim Rabbi Shmuel, Loisasa L'chol Pesel, Yochol Loisas the Gelufo, Avoyase Lo Atumo. You can make it question hollow or not, or completely full. Tamaloi V'chol Tmuna. Loyase Lo Atumo, Avoyita Loi Mata. You can plant it. Tamaloi Sidlocha Ashero. Loyita Loi Mate. Avoyase Loi Shel Eitz. But you can make an avodah zarah Shel Eitz. Tamaloima Kol Eitz. Loyase Loi Shel Eitz. Avoyase Lo Shel Even. Tamaloima V'Even Maskis. Loyase Loi Shel Even. Av Tamaloim V'Even Maskis. Lo Yase Lo Shel Even. Avo Yase Shel Kesef. Tamaloim V'Ei Kesef. So it's an amazing thing. The Mechilta learns an unbelievable pshat that Even Maskis, Lois Sasel Ba'artzechem, is an Isa of Asiyas Avodah Zarah. And that's the lav. So it comes out that so it means that it's the next lav, the lav of Even Maskis. And if you go like the Ibn Ezra, the lav of Matzeva is lav Vasiyas Avodah Zarah. So I was wondering, if you're ready to accept all this, maybe you can understand of Sadigain that all these three mitzvahs he doesn't count. He doesn't count Matzeva, he doesn't count Even Maskis, and he doesn't count because it's all a kefil of the lav of Asiyas Avodah Zarah, which he has. Now, so you have three pshatim, all different permutation of Avodah Zarah. And comes Rashi in Chumash and more clearer in Maseches Megillah, a whole new pshat. That there's a law of doing Doima LeMikdash outside Mikdash. Mikdash is miyuchad fishtachavo al avonim, and to make avonim michutz is doing dumi LeMikdash outside Mikdash. Listen to the Rashi. Rashi in Vayikra. They were maskev and maskes loshen kisui. Come over sakrisi kapar. Shemachasen akarka b'ritz sabon. They were masko lishtachavo yisaleho afilu shamayim. Lefi shishtachavo b'pisha rayim hi. The osra teira lasis kain chutz lemikdash. That's the Isa. Here it's not clear. You can say it's only he's saying over the drasha, the Gemara Megillah. Chav or Beis do a maskal my timer. Excuse me. In Megillah, my timer Rav lo nofal ape. Why didn't Rav fall on his face on the kachel? Ritzba shel avodim oisa. But Tanya, we have a maskal sit be'atzchem l'shtachmas alel. Oleh ato b'shtachave be'atzchem or ato b'shtachave al avodim shel beis hamikdash. Kiru'ula, v'yoma'ula, v'rosa teira l'ritzba shel avodim. Zatrashi in Megillah. Loy osra teira beposik ze ele shelo yasu ritzpas avonim bebeis hakeneses dugmas shel mikdash. That's very foolish. That the Isa is the master demon of mikdash. So 4 different shotim, and I had to learn one simple pasuk of Evan Maskas L'Sipim B'Altzach. Now, we're going to have to deal with 2 very important questions over here. One is, what is the Isa? Here in Sefer HaMitzvos and in Minyan HaKotzer, you get the impression it's an Isa Asiyah to make the Evan Maskis. In Protei Mitzvos, the Ram says the Isa Shtachavo, Shol Shtachavois al Evan Maskis. So I was wondering that if the Isa is an Isa Avasiya, so then the whole issue of what is the chefs of Evan Maskis, Evan Muchanes Lishtachavo, and whether it has to be Torah talks about a Mitsuya or not Mitsuya, and what constitutes an Evan for Ishtachavo is a very important issue. However, if you say that the Isa is not the making of the Evan, but the Hishtachavo al Evan, so there's no need that the Evan should be muchan for anything. It's just you take an Evan, you bow down on it. The whole discussion here is how do you make it muchan? Is it dafka through the tziur, or it's anyway, it's muchan? But if the lav is a lav of Ishtachavo, maybe the whole issue of the definition of maskis is completely irrelevant. We'll have to go through this and like to see in Mishnah Torah if it actually works out. And then we're going to have to deal over here with the Sefer. What does the Rambam want with this Sefer? Omo Yis'ale, we have a master, and he quotes Sefer. Voloshin Sefer, L'sitna Be'artzchem, Ein ato mishtachim al avonim, mishtachim al avonim, bebeis hamikdash. Why in the world is Rambam talking? If the lav is like Rashi that's doing the mikdash, I understand. If the lav is a lav of Ishtachavo al Evan, I understand. But according to the Ram, we have no clue what he's talking about. And then the final thing, we'll have to ask ourselves a very interesting question. The Rashi proved from the Gemara and Megillah that the lav is dugma the mikdash. And comes the Rambam says, you know something? Where am I going to find the dinim of this lav of Evan Maskas L'Sipim B'Altzchem? Oh, the Gemara Megillah. V'Aisbar Mishtei Mitzazu, the Gemara Megillah, which the Gemara Chav Beis Mebeis, which Rashi says is saying the opposite. We'll have to see according to Rambam all this works out. So we have still a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we've laid the groundwork to begin to talk about this. So Mitzvah Hashem will pick up this next week, and Bli Neder, and also the lav T.S. Elon B'Mikdash, number 13. That's